I tell you you're remembering wrong, that you're too sensitive, that you're imagining things. That's gaslighting. The more you doubt yourself, the more control I have. Here's how I make you question your own reality." She stood there, eyes wide, a tremor in her voice, accusing me of something I knew, absolutely knew, I had never done. Or perhaps I had, but it certainly wasn't how she remembered it. Her memory was always so dramatic, so focused on her victimhood. The exact details blurred for me sometimes, which was convenient. A convenient fog that settled over inconvenient truths that might challenge my flawless image of myself as the perfect, long-suffering partner. It was always easier to reframe the incident, to sculpt the narrative into something more palatable, more me, the hero, the reasonable person, the misunderstood victim of her predictable overreaction. I watched her face, the slow dawning of confusion. I could see the wheels turning, the moment she started to question her own perception of the event instead of challenging mine directly. Her gaze flickered away from mine, darting around the room, a clear sign that her internal certainty was fracturing. Good, I thought. The seed was planted. It began subtly, a whisper of doubt here, a casual dismissal there. You always overreact, darling. You need to learn to control your temper. Why do you make such a drama out of everything that happens? That's not what I said. You're deliberately misinterpreting my joke. You twist my words because you always assume the worst of me, and that's frankly hurtful. It wasn't about the specific incident, not really. It was about eroding her confidence, brick by careful brick, until she felt unsafe, relying on her own judgment for anything, from where she left her keys to the nature of our entire relationship. I was systematically teaching her that her memory was unreliable, her emotions excessive, and her interpretation of my motives was always flawed, a fatal cocktail designed to make her look inward for the flaw, not at me, the source of the chaos. I noticed the way she started pausing, visibly struggling to articulate simple points, second-guessing herself mid-sentence, waiting for my reaction, looking to me for confirmation before stating something as simple as the day of the week or what movie we watched last night. That hesitation, that constant need for my input, that was progress, demonstrating her full dependence on my ultimate authority to define her reality. I remember one time, early on, we were at dinner with her friends, a setting where her social capital mattered deeply to her, and she sought external validation for our relationship. She recounted a story, something about a trip we'd taken, a funny mishap with our luggage, trying to paint a charming, relatable picture of our life. I saw an opportunity to undermine her subtly. I interjected, smooth as silk, a look of kind, gentle correction on my face. That wasn't on that trip, sweetheart. You're confusing your timelines. That was when we went to the coastal city last year. Remember the silly argument we had there? That's what actually caused the delay, not the luggage. You must be confusing the details again. A small correction, seemingly innocent, but it introduced a sharp note of subtle discord and shifted the focus from a funny mishap to her memory failure and our conflict, placing the blame for the travel trouble, however minor, back on her. I made it clear that her memory was faulty and that she was responsible for the negative emotion, but her brow furrowed. She looked at me, then back at her friends, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, frantically trying to reconcile her vivid memory with my definitive, confident statement. "Oh, was it?" she asked, her voice smaller, seeking validation from the very people she was trying to entertain. I smiled, reassuring, almost pitying, the picture of patience and reliability. Of course, you always get those trips mixed up. It's all right, but you really do need to be more careful when telling stories. I have to keep track of the important stuff for both of us, don't I? I saw her friends exchange a quick glance, a glance of mild concern for her scattered state, accepting the narrative that she was the problem, not suspicion of me, their charming dinner host. They accepted my role as the reliable, stabilizing one. She let it go, accepting the correction. And a tiny victory was mine, a moment where I subtly and publicly positioned myself as the custodian of our shared history and her as the forgetful, unreliable partner, right in front of her social circle, further isolating her internal perspective. The real motive? Control. Absolute, unyielding, totalitarian control. The feeling of dominion is everything. It's the fuel that briefly fills the gaping void of my self-worth. When you doubt your own memories, your own perceptions, your own sanity, you become entirely dependent on my version of reality. My word becomes your truth, the only stable point in a world I have deliberately made chaotic for you, preventing you from ever seeing me clearly. It's a beautiful, intricate dance of power and balance, a carefully choreographed psychological warfare, and I lead every step, knowing that she will follow, because the alternative, complete disorientation and loneliness, is terrifying to her. I cultivated this dance carefully. I wasn't always dismissing her. Consistent devaluation would be too obvious, too easy to leave. The key is the inconsistency, the intermittent reinforcement, the hot and cold. Sometimes I would be attentive, affirming, showering her with affection, the very picture of the loving partner I was during the idealization phase. These sporadic moments, these unexpected bursts of affection and genuine connection, they were crucial. They created the trauma bond, the powerful, often unconscious attachment born from a cycle of intense pain followed by intense relief. They kept her hooked, waiting for the good me to return, believing that the cruelty was the aberration, not the standard, rationalizing my bad behavior as stress or a reaction to her flaws. She was like a gambler at a slot machine, pulling the lever again and again, hoping for that jackpot, that flash of love, that familiar warmth. It was her recreational chemical, her high, a massive dopamine release created by the reconciliation after conflict, and it created a chemical dependency stronger than any consistent bad behavior could manage. And I was the dealer, controlling the timing of her next dose of validation and peace. She wasn't addicted to the pain. She was desperately addicted to the relief. The return of the illusion was the ultimate reward, the proof that the good times were real, and that the fault for the bad times must truly lie with her, prompting her to try harder to earn back the mask. I knew the effect I had. I saw the worry lines deepen around her eyes, the way she'd second-guess herself before speaking, her natural confidence completely extinguished. She had become a shadow, hesitant and apologetic. The physical toll was visible, the restless sleep, the jumpiness, the constant anxiety that kept her walking on eggshells, forever anticipating my next shift in mood. Sometimes she'd even apologize for things that were clearly my fault, a dropped glass, a forgotten errand, my bad mood, just to smooth things over, to try and regain that brief, false period of peace and stability. It was intoxicating, this power, this ability to warp her world, to make her question the very ground beneath her feet, until she sought my guidance for basic decisions like what to wear or how to answer an email. I'm not a terrible person. I'm just efficient at leveraging human weakness for my own benefit. I understand human nature, its vulnerabilities, its craving for certainty and familiarity. I knew that intensity and chaos, especially if it mirrored early childhood attachment wounds, like having an unpredictable or critical parent, often gets mistaken for passion, and that walking on eggshells, when framed correctly, feels like intense, high-stakes chemistry. I simply exploit that craving for familiarity, guiding her toward the certainty of my manufactured reality, because it is far simpler than confronting the profound, gnawing emptiness inside of me that demands constant, unending external validation to feel real. Her friends started to notice, of course, not the manipulation directly. They only saw the symptoms of her stress. She seems so withdrawn, so brittle lately, almost paranoid, one said to me, pulling me aside at a gathering, pretending deep concern while gathering gossip. I nodded gravely, my face etched with practiced worry and exhaustion. Yes, she's been under a lot of stress lately, and she refuses to admit she needs help. It's getting hard for me to manage her unpredictable emotional state. I'm doing my absolute best to support her, but she's quite fragile, you know. She has these episodes where she misremembers things. Sometimes her grip on reality seems a little shaky, and I worry she's truly losing control. I even managed to shed a tear or two, talking about how worried I was about her well-being and how much work and emotional labor she demanded from me. I immediately established myself as the heroic, worried partner, struggling to cope with her instability, the true victim of her erratic behavior. It's brilliant, really. I deny what she says, attack her character, and reverse victim and offender. The key is to preempt the accusation, turning her future truth-telling into evidence of her illness. I become the victim, and she becomes the problem, thereby making her future cries for help sound like more symptoms of her self-professed fragility, ensuring that no one takes her seriously when she finally speaks up. I'd see her checking her phone obsessively, rereading old messages, trying to find proof that I did say that, proof that she wasn't crazy. She was desperate to hold on to any shred of factual reality, any objective evidence that countered my narrative, searching for validation in the digital past, sometimes staying up until 4 a.m, scrolling through texts. It was a delicious spectacle, like watching a mouse run on a wheel I controlled, expending all her mental and emotional energy, proving a point I already erased from her mind and the minds of her friends. I'd watch her, pretending to be absorbed in a book or responding to an important email, while she frantically searched for a foothold in her crumbling reality. She often missed the fact that my texts were always carefully vague and deniable. I rarely used clear, damning language in writing, preferring plausible deniability. Then, when she looked up, defeated, her eyes red from sleeplessness and strain, I'd offer a gentle, bewildered smile, feigning concern. "Everything all right, darling? You look troubled. Are you stressing yourself out over nothing again? You know how you get when you obsess over minor details. You need to relax." And the cycle would continue, reaffirming that her worry and her search for truth was the problem, not my actions, and pushing her further into the isolation of her own self-doubt, away from external validation. The smear campaign was my masterpiece, my preemptive strike, executed with the precision of a calculated chess move, well before she could form a coherent escape plan. Before she had the clarity to see the pattern, I had already planted the seeds of doubt about her in the minds of anyone who mattered: her family, her employer, her closest friends. She's been struggling with her mental health for a while. I'd confide in mutual acquaintances, my voice laced with fake sorrow and deep, weary concern. I'm genuinely worried about her judgment. She has a tendency to exaggerate and misremember facts. It's exhausting trying to help her. I just wish she would listen to me when I suggest she seeks professional help. People believe me instantly because the story of the concerned, struggling partner is so much easier to believe than the existence of cold, calculated malice. Why wouldn't they? I was always so charming, so reasonable. The picture of stability and my fabricated concern seemed altruistic. I needed to ensure that if she ever found the courage to speak the truth, to say I was abusive, no one would hear it as anything but the ranting of an unstable, jealous, or even delusional person. The goal was to destroy her credibility so completely that she would be socially isolated and politically mute, turning her into a pariah whom others felt sorry for, but dared not believe or associate with. I needed people to do my work for me, my flying monkeys, the willing or unwitting agents who carried my propaganda. They would reach out to her, supposedly concerned, offering support or advice to be nicer to me, but really just gathering information and reinforcing my narrative of her fragility. He's so worried about you, they tell her, effectively forcing her to internalize my projection and confirming to her that the entire world saw her as the problem she had become. She isolated herself without even realizing it, pulling away from friends who seemed cold or distant. Friends stopped calling as much, tired of the non-existent drama I fabricated or unwilling to get involved in what looked like her mental breakdown. The family seemed more guarded, convinced by my performance that I was the only one capable of handling her issues. They didn't see me manipulating her. They saw her acting erratically, exactly as I had described. I orchestrated it all. A truly effective campaign doesn't just discredit. It makes the target feel discredited, feel alone, and eventually causes the target to doubt whether the abuse even happened, which is the ultimate silent victory of the gaslighter. She begins to police her own reality on my behalf, becoming her own jailer. I remember her finally confronting me in the kitchen, her voice shaking with a desperate strength I hadn't seen before, her last gasp of self-belief, the final time she would try to convince me of the truth. She was holding up a screenshot of an old text, her hand trembling. "You did say this. Look, you called me worthless and lazy when I was sick," she cried, her eyes pleading for acknowledgement, for validation of her suffering, which was all she truly wanted. I took the phone, squinted at it casually, delaying my reaction just long enough to infuriate her further and assert dominance over the evidence itself, making her wait for the judgment. "Ah, yes," I said, a slow, condescending smile spreading across my face, as if indulging a child. "But context is everything, isn't it? You've conveniently left out the part where you provoked me by refusing to do your part when I needed help, where you went on a tirade and misunderstood my intentions completely. You twist things, always have. I was merely pointing out that the behavior was worthless, not you, darling. I was trying to motivate you to step up, to be better for both of us." Her shoulders slumped. The light in her eyes flickered out, extinguished by the final, inescapable twist of logic that blamed her for my cruelty. It was a victory, another one. She was losing the fight against my reality, and I knew that soon she would be too exhausted to fight at all, having surrendered her mind, leaving her entirely mine. He thinks he won. He thinks he successfully dismantled her sanity, that she'll forever be caught in the web of his lies, forever dependent on his perception, his word being the only law in her universe. But there is one thing that terrifies a narcissist more than anything else: being exposed, not just being found out, but being publicly stripped of their persona. The mask slipping, the truth coming out, the world seeing them for who they truly are. A fragile, terrified shell of insecurity hiding behind an aggressive, arrogant facade. That fear is not just anxiety, it is existential dread that gnaws at them constantly, the fear of complete destruction of the false self. It dictates every move they make, and it's their greatest weakness because it makes them predictable. They cannot tolerate the loss of their manufactured image, which is the only thing standing between them and feeling utterly empty and worthless. Their whole existence is predicated on that false front of perfection, and they will go to extreme lengths to protect it. Therefore, the moment you successfully and calmly anchor yourself to the objective truth, when you stop reacting to their projections and maintain your own reality, his foundation begins to crack because you are threatening the one thing he cannot live without, the illusion of perfection. To counter this weapon, the gaslighting that feeds the trauma bond and makes you doubt your own life, you must engage in reality testing. This isn't about fighting him or proving yourself to him, because he will never validate you. It's about rebuilding your own internal compass, which he deliberately scrambled. Keep a written list. This list is your evidence, your proof, your unedited transcript of reality that no one can distort. Document every abusive incident, every cruel text, every time he twisted your words and what he actually said. When he gaslights you, when you feel that familiar urge to doubt yourself and wonder if you're too sensitive, read your list. Read the objective facts versus the fantasy he is trying to create. This is your proof, your anchor to reality, and the only thing that matters is that you believe it. Do not let his voice become the narrator of your life. Let your documented truth guide you. The urge to engage, to argue, to justify yourself, to make him understand your perspective is often a symptom of the trauma bond, a desperate craving for the dopamine hit of reconciliation, that false high when he finally appears to apologize and offer temporary peace. This need to explain yourself is not rational communication. It is the physiological yearning for the pain relief cycle to complete, triggering a chemical rush that your brain has been conditioned to equate with safety and love. Instead, you must learn to delay your response. When you feel the overwhelming, gut-wrenching need to reach out or immediately respond to his attempts to pull you back in, the Hoover, impose a strict waiting period. 24 hours is the bare minimum. 48 hours is better. During this imposed timeout, do something else entirely. Physically separate yourself from the phone, leave the room, or engage in a concrete, absorbing task like cleaning, deep breathing exercises, or strenuous physical activity like exercise, anything designed to regulate your nervous system and shift your focus from the emotional crisis to the physical world. This delay allows the physiological urgency the craving, to subside. Most times, the desperate urgency will fade and clarity will return, allowing you to realize the feeling was not genuine love or connection, but simply the manipulation for what it is, a simple, predictable tactic to pull the lever on your addiction and regain control of your emotional state by making you chase his approval. Ultimately, because this entire dynamic is an addictive cycle, demanding total abstinence, no contact is often the only truly effective way to break the chemical hook of the trauma bond and allow your nervous system to fully regulate. This means absolutely no communication in any form, no emails, no calls, no responding to messages, period. It also requires rigorous no social media monitoring. Stalking his profile is just another way to inject the recreational chemical into your system, as you are just looking for ways to re-engage, which is the addiction talking. Finally, you must eliminate all use of mutual friends acting as conduits. Complete, permanent severance is the cure for the chemical dependency, and anything less prolongs the withdrawal. If complete, no contact is genuinely impossible, for instance, due to shared custody of children, essential workplace necessity, or unavoidable legal proceedings, then low contact or the gray rock method becomes essential. This involves becoming as uninteresting and unreactive as a gray rock. When engagement is required, provide only factual, minimal responses. Yes, no, Friday at 5. Deliver the information flatly, without any emotional inflection, eye contact, or elaboration. Offer no emotion, no personal information, and no hint of your current life or feelings. Nothing he can use to draw you back into the emotional drama and feed his insatiable need for supply. Finally, you must embrace radical acceptance. Accept that the nice version of him, the idealized person you initially fell in love with and keep chasing, is not the real him. That was the bait, the expertly crafted mask designed to reel you in and exploit your compassion. The abuse, the gaslighting, the manipulation, that is the authentic personality, the core of the disorder, and that is the person you were truly dealing with. Stop trying to heal his emotional pain or fix him so he won't run away. His behavior is not a cry for help. It's a calculated strategy to maintain control and siphon your energy. When you stop trying to save him, when you finally mourn the loss of the person you thought he was, and accept the difficult, painful truth of the person he is, you can finally start saving yourself. You're not too sensitive. You're not crazy. You're correct. Trust that unwavering internal conviction. You have the truth, and that truth is your power. You deserve to trust yourself, and you deserve a reality that is grounded in truth, not someone else's warped perception. If you've been nodding along, if you felt that cold dread of having your own sanity questioned, I want you to know you are not alone. This dynamic is a calculated trap, but the lock is broken the moment you stop doubting your own experience. Take that list, make it your shield, and remember that your internal truth is the only compass you need. Trust your gut. That instinct is your ultimate defense. You got this. If this script gave you the clarity and strength you needed today, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you these deep dive deconstructions so you can reclaim your power. I'll see you in the next video.